Welcome back to the Morphing Tower podcast, everyone. Before we get into today's episode, I'm just going to read this here little memo I've got. And what do you know? It's from the Workplace Safety Committee. Again, I mean, these guys are becoming a fan favorite. And it says thusly, we've been receiving reports that employees have been walking backwards out of the unfinished 49th floor. Though it was originally thought that they were simply leaving the area after the noise complaints, it has been observed that these employees continue walking backwards to their designated floor. There have been several collisions with these directionally challenged employees that have been reported. We, the Workplace Safety Committee, advise anyone who sees an employee walking backwards to simply step out of the way and let them get back to work. Signed, WSC, which I'd completely forgotten about the whole unfinished 49th floor fiasco, but apparently we got people walking backwards out of there, so that's great. I am joined today by Brendan. Say hello, Brendan.
Hello, everyone.
And we are standing in... What is this place exactly?
This would be the alcohol production floor. So what we do here is we have certain areas designated for, we have beer production, wine production, mead, distilled spirits, so whiskey, vodka, rum, tequila, anything like that. But across from that, we also have gasoline production, which may come in handy if we can get out of this godforsaken building. Right now, all it does is it runs, well, we produce gasoline for our generators in the unfortunate event that power fails. And since we are stuck in this building, we have all the booze your heart could desire. You know, like we are set. We just need, vending machines to keep, some kind of substantial nutrients to us.
What you're describing is the most flammable floor in the building.
Oh, yes. The closest flame source, aside from our stills here, the closest flame source is, I believe, on like floor 48, which is about 6 or 7 floors below us.
I mean, I was wondering why like half of the room is like cars up on lifts and then the other half is a bunch of like gigantic barrels. But now that makes sense.
Yes. So the cars are actually for decoration because we can't get out. And so these cars are just kind of stuck here. We had a nice little ramp that came up to us. And these cars are just now abandoned because the owners can't get in and we can't go out. That shaft or makeshift downward spiral, it just disintegrated out of nowhere. That was our escape. That was how we could get out of the building. And with corporate shutting everything down, it seems that collapse, it might be a coincidence. I don't know.
Yeah, there have been a couple architectural whoopsie-daisies recently where stuff that's been there for a long time just sort of isn't there anymore. I don't know if it was just shoddy work materials. I don't know.
It may be, I mean, it's, as far as, the U.S. government and being a former DOD employee, the lowest bidder always wins. So that may be a situation here where the lowest bidder won, and it lasted, I don't know, 15 years or so. So, I mean, we do have some unique cars in here. I mean, I can see over there, I think we still have, like, an old Corvette. People love the Corvettes. I think your dad's Mustang has been up here before.
Yeah, it has.
We did an oil change and brake inspection. And a couple of other, like, cool, unique cars. But, yeah, these cars are for the unforeseeable future. They are stuck up here with us.
Yeah, the lowest bidder does win. And, I heard... I think the lowest bidder probably uses, like, paper mache or something like that, which would explain after the first rain that ramp just sort of,
It just fell apart.
It just sort of went away. Well... On the topic of cars and races, I came across a delightful little article by the AP News that I wanted to share with you because it's one of the most absurd things I've ever heard. So this is under the World News category for AP News, and this is the title: Olympics Taster. Paris race celebrates the servers who nourish cities' life and soul. So what this is in 1914 in France, there was a server race. So like table servers, like waiters and waitresses.
Oh,
and
okay.
after 110 years, they're bringing it back. And so the images here on the terminal are basically just a bunch of like sad French people with trays full of food with marathon numbers stuck to their shirts. And I'll just read some excerpts here. So let's see. The resurrection of the waitering race after a 13-year hiatus is part of Paris's effort to bask in the Olympic spotlight and put its best foot forward for its first summer games in 100 years. The first waiters race was run in 1914. This time, a couple of hundred servers dressed up in their uniforms with the finest sporting bow ties and loaded up their trays with a regulation pastry, small but empty coffee cup, and glass full of water for the 2-kilometer, that's 1.25 mile loop starting and finishing at City Hall. So they have to walk with a tray of stuff for 1.25 miles and without dropping anything, I guess. And it's this quote might be the most unhinged thing about this story. Van Wymeersch, this is the name of the person, the runaway winner in the women's category in 14 minutes 12 seconds, started waitering at age 16, is now 34, and said she cannot envisage any other life for herself. This is a quote. I love it as much as I hate it. It's in my skin. I cannot leave it.
What on earth?
She said of the profession, it's hard, it's exhausting, it's demanding, it's 12 hours per day, it's no weekends, it's no Christmases. But it's part of my DNA. I grew up in a way with a tray in my hand, she added. I've been shaped in life and in the job by the bosses who trained me and the customers, all of the people I have met.
What?
That is truly insane.
So, you said she was a racer?
Yeah, that was her time. I think she won at 14 minutes, 12 seconds.
To walk 1.25 miles.
With a tray of stuff, yeah.
With a tray of stuff. Now, see, what is funny is the fact that the cups of coffee were empty.
The coffee cup was empty, yeah. The glass of water's full, but I think they should have to do it with the coffee in there.
Yeah,
they should have to get to the finish line before it's cold. Are you kidding me?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So why are they empty? Or why is the coffee empty?
I'll tell you why. It's because the race runners don't want a McDonald's hot coffee lawsuit, and they don't want anybody burning themselves.
Well, that's the thing. Don't spill it.
That's great advice.
Well,
just don't spill it.
If you're already going into this kind of a race, then you should know the risks that are there. So, I mean, if you're walking, say the servers are walking, you have your baguettes and your other pastry items and such, but you also have a butter knife or, a sharper knife or something, and you walk and that falls and it stabs your foot. That's your own fault. So I'm going to say the exact same thing for the people that they should have filled these coffee mugs up to the brim with hot coffee. Points deducted for every half ounce that spills out.
You're ruthless. You're more ruthless than the French judges. The French judges of servers. That's insanity. These images, man, are just... This whole thing seems AI generated. Just like the image, the concept, which also brings me to another topic, which will date this episode, but that's okay. Did you hear about the Willy Wonka ripoff experience in Glasgow, Scotland?
No, but I have heard of the Muffin Man.
The Muffin Man! Okay, so basically, I'll just condense it because the story's been told and retold on multiple podcasts ad nauseum. And my good friends, the Foolish Wanderers podcast, they did an entire episode dedicated to this that I'll link below. But essentially, there's a fellow, his name is Billy Cowell, and he publishes AI generated novels. So 17 novels that are listed on Amazon. I'm reading from a BBC article here. And basically, this is the author's biographical information describes him. So this is how he describes himself. Quote, enigmatic wordsmith from the bustling streets of Glasgow. And, quote, rising star of the literary world. It continues, with each stroke of his pen, Billy Cowell crafts narratives that blur the lines between reality and fiction, leaving readers enthralled by the unpredictable twists and turns that lie ahead. A reviewer of one of the books was not convinced, describing it as, quote, absolute nonsense, full of gibberish sentences which had all the hallmarks of being written by AI. And so this is the person who decided they're gonna create an event based off of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory in Scotland at a warehouse. And so what this gentleman did is he AI generated a script, but again, for legal reasons, he had to rename everything. So I think it ended up being just called like Willy's Chocolate Experience or whatever. Okay. The images are absurd of like the ad, the posters basically are absurd. They're hyper crowded with candy. It's clearly AI generated, but that's the promotional material. The actual images of the warehouse is the most pathetic, sad. There's almost a liminal quality to some of it. Like, it is horrifying because these parents just saw the AI generated ad stuff and brought their kids. They paid money for this. Show up on the day. You may have seen an image, a meme of one of the poor young ladies who is supposed to be playing an off-brand Oompa Loompa that they call Wonky Doodles. And
Wonky Doodles.
The picture here on the terminal is of the saddest Oompa Loompa, like, sitting at a table full of, like, chemistry equipment that looks like a drug dealer. Basically, the internet, of course, was memeing the daylights out of this because they felt bad for the actors because they found out the actors basically got hired off of Indeed, like right before the event started. They got handed like a 15-page script like right before it started. And some of the other employees, I don't think were getting, like, they didn't get paid. So the internet was mad on their behalf that they had to suffer through this nonsense. But the image of this lady at this table became famous, like, overnight, just because of how terrible it looked. Like, everything about it was awful.
And I am seeing the images that appear on the terminal.
Yeah.
And
you have any questions?
So I have a question about the first image.
Uh-huh.
The I don't even know how to describe this woman.
I feel doodle?
Bad.
Yeah, the Wonka doodle.
Yeah, I feel bad. But at the same time, I don't. How did she get in this predicament? Because it does not look good.
So, again, I think the actors were hired last minute, and they just thought it was an acting gig. And basically, what I heard, I'd have to fact check, but they showed up to the location the night before, and were basically told, oh, it's going to look better tomorrow. Like, we're going to finish setting up. And then they go back the next day, and no, it was just as bad as the night before. I think since a lot of this memeing has happened, at least one or two of the actresses has come forward to, like, share their awful experience about the situation and sort of make light of it. Because, like, what else do you do? Like, they were just as miserable as everyone else. Like, they were trying to, like, save it for the kids.
Yeah, she looks truly miserable.
I think one of them is Kirsty Patterson. I think Kirsty Patterson is the one you're seeing in that picture. And she's done some interviews, I think, since then, just sort of, like, poking fun at it, because she knows that it was terrible. I'm sure she didn't want to be a part of it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's no way. She is not enjoying herself. And
my favorite aspect of this story is the fact that this gentleman, Billy Cowell, decided it would be a good idea to AI generate the full advertisement. So he used like probably ChatGPT or something to write this script. But the problem is he was using an image generator to make ads, and ads that have like subtitling across the bottom. So when AI is pulling from all these different ads that have been made over decades, it tries to like create like some sort of combination of all of them. And it's just loaded with misspellings, basically.
Oh.
Like, because it's an AI generated advertisement, so it's trying its best, but if you look at a lot of the words, they're not actually words.
Oh, jeez.
So it says like instead of like introducing, it says ensuring, and then captivating is catgacating.
And this was my concern when you said like AI generated novels is how much money is he funneling into the people who have to proofread that stuff? But also, what was one of the first things you said about this guy with his penmanship?
Oh yeah, the way he describes himself in this article down near the bottom is so like self-important. It says the author's biographical information describes him as a quote enigmatic wordsmith from the bustling streets of Glasgow and a rising star of the literary world.
Whatever. I am not buying into this. He has 17 novels?
Yeah, published last year.
Oh, sorry. No, the AI have 17 novels that he has, I guess, had proofread and published. He did nothing.
No, he did nothing. Like. You want to know the worst part about Willy's chocolate experience?
What?
There was no chocolate.
I was about to ask if there was no chocolate.
They got a cup of lemonade and some jelly beans.
And that's it?
Yeah. It was so sketchy that the parents called the police.
What?
My favorite part of this story is the fact that since he AI generated the script, he had to just work with whatever the computer vomited out. And so this machine decided to create an antagonist character that would hide behind mirrors called the Unknown. And it's just an actor in a scary mask, in a hood and cloak, and it would hide behind these mirrors. And I can't remember which article I was reading, but basically the person who played the Unknown got an acting gig from like a haunted house nearby because he was actually scaring the kids. Yeah, the whole thing was just insanity, and it's so funny. And like I said, a lot of people have talked about it just because of how bad it is. It's actually funny. Of course, the internet will never lose, and so a lot of people were trying to get the event brought back just as is, like no embellishments, because a lot of people online wanted to experience this tragedy for themselves. Like they wanted to be able to say that they went to Willy's chocolate experience in Glasgow. Like they wanted to see just how truly abysmal it actually was, which is just so funny.
That is awful.
So I have a challenge for us though, right?
Okay.
So you have Willy's chocolate experience. You have this character, this off-brand Willy Wonka. You have the Wonky Doodles. You have the Unknown hiding behind mirrors, which is just totally, like, tonally off. If an AI can make something confusing, humans, you and I, we could make something worse. The fact is, I don't want to be outdone in badness by an AI. So my question to you is, if we take the Willy's chocolate experience as our rubric, how would we make something even worse?
How would we make something even... Well, I mean, we could just AI generate something and read through it and see if it's worse. That's what this guy did.
We could, when the children show up, you know, their parents pay like the $45 or whatever they ended up paying, and they show up, and we what if we AI generated their candy just like on a screen? Like,
Yeah,
how do you?
it's
How
not
do
even
you?
real candy.
No, of course not. How do you make it worse? The event took place in an empty warehouse, but there was some decorations. How do we make the location worse?
I mean, you could do like a dilapidating barn.
A barn?
Like a barn that. I mean, I used to see these all the time, like looking out our windows. Like I could faintly see, like, oh, that barn looks like it's leaning, and then like a week or two later, there was just a brown spot on the ground because they came in and cleared it out. We can just set up for a week or two.
No, this is great. So in the Willy's Chocolate Experience, there was a clip of audio that became a meme where it was basically like the actor who had to play the off-brand Willy Wonka going, "What's that? It's the unknown." And then you just hear like audio of children starting to cry, and then the audio cuts off. You just hear all these kids going, and then the audio just cuts off, right? So that was a situation where their parents are there and they could leave, right? They were able to just leave, call the cops, like all this stuff. What if the event's in a barn, but it turns into a surprise escape room?
Oh.
You know how in the original Willy Wonka movie, the contract that they have to sign, the lettering gets really, really small until you can't read it anymore? We need to bring that back, but down in the tiny little text, it's actually like, you are agreeing to be locked in this dilapidated barn, and you have to try and escape before the barn falls over.
How long would you have them? Well, we can't even put a time frame on it.
No, absolutely.
It could be like you have in between like 2 hours and 2 weeks.
Yeah, you don't know when the barn's coming down. It could be any minute.
You don't know when your imminent escape versus your realistic escape will happen. You don't know what escape is going to happen first. Every minute counts.
Exactly.
Oh, I like it.
First of all, I feel like Billy Cowell, the AI generation guy, I feel like he needs to be in peril somehow. He needs to atone. Like there needs to be some sort of dunk tank mechanic where like he's should be forced into the Willy Wonka role, but like if the kids don't get out, he doesn't get out, but he can't give them the answer. So he actually has to be nice to the kids and get them to figure out the puzzles, or the barn falls on all of them.
Ouch! Like, oh, that's a little twist. That's you have to find out on your own how to get out in order to save the person that trapped you in.
Yeah. It's literally that. There are some escape rooms that are like that, where they'll have like an actor in the other room playing like a prisoner, and like you have to help them escape or something like that.
Yes.
But this time, it's real though,
and it's life or death.
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
Walter's Chocolate Barn. What would be the name?
I think Walter would probably work. Did you ever see Breaking Bad?
I did.
The main guy's name is Walter.
Yeah.
So that would work.
Are you proposing?
Yes.
Are you proposing crossing Breaking Bad with Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory?
Why not?
So is it a meth lab in the barn?
It's a chocolate lab. It has to be a chocolate lab for it to go along with Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. But we are doing it's not even that it's like a generic brand Willy Wonka. It is so far down in the bottom of the barrel. I mean, you are scraping scum to get an AI generated Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory. So we have Walter's Cocoa Manufacturing Plant.
Yes, and they have to like make good chocolate so they can escape. Like that's how you have to escape.
Yes, the AI catch is it didn't translate cocoa. So it is Walter's Coke Manufacturing Company, where we have cocaine being manufactured.
Yes,
on accident because the people didn't know the difference.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, I just thought of something even worse. You know how the actors got given like a 15-page script? What if like they had to work their way through like a much longer script and like you can't deviate. So you have to speed through the script as fast as possible before the barn falls over.
Yes, I love it. They have to go through it as fast as they can. and that would be, I guess, kind of the lighthearted part about it is these people, they escape, and then they read in the newspaper that like 9 days later, the barn collapsed, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, we were rushing for nothing." Well, here comes the second batch, and they don't even make it out because the barn collapsed before they could escape.
Yeah, you were lucky.
You
the
know?
barn stays the same. Like the event stops forever once the barn falls over.
Yeah, and so we just find a new barn.
Well, I think we successfully made Willy's chocolate experience even worse. So good job. Excellent.
That was my hope.
Speaking of being at a table with little chemicals and glass objects, you mentioned mead earlier, and I know that you when did you start getting into making mead, and like what is mead? Could you describe like how you got into it, what the process is like? Could you explain that?
Yeah. So I probably got into mead in 2022. I'm trying to think. Yeah, it was probably midway through 2022. I had two coworkers of mine that were it's just called home brewing. So you can home brew wine, mead, beer, any other type of fermentable alcoholic beverage. Even kombucha, which I don't know how to explain kombucha. That doesn't make sense to me. And I haven't delved into it. But mead is very similar to wine in that what you are fermenting is actually honey instead of grapes or any other type of fruit.
I didn't know you could ferment honey.
Yes. So you can ferment anything that has and I should put, like, if this was typed out, I should put an asterisk. Anything that has sugar, any sugar content is fermentable, but that sugar has to be, you can use like white, like table sugar, but basically like that's the extent of the processed sugars you can use. So, I mean, you probably could not ferment like a can of Coke or something.
It would just eat through whatever you were trying to ferment it in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Have you seen the time lapses where people use it to clean toilets? They'll pour a Coke into a toilet and then leave it for like months, and then they empty it out and it's like perfectly clean. It's just been stripped from all the chemicals that are in the Coke.
Yeah, there are so many chemicals in sodas. It is... as an American, that is definitely appalling. The amount of things that we add to anything. I mean, it's just about everything you consume has some sort of chemical in it. The only way that you can get away from chemicals is if you home grow your own things.
Is there a chemical process or any chemical additive for making mead, or is it just the fermentation process?
I don't add any chemicals to anything I make just because I want it to be as pure as possible. I have made mead from locally sourced honey. So you'll have, honeybee farmers. Essentially, they will jar up their honey, and I will pick up about maybe a quart or two of honey. I went to a farmer's market and picked up some apples, and I've made a cinnamon apple mead. Ooh. And the only thing that I didn't have control over was the cinnamon sticks I used. It may or may not have been true cinnamon. That's something that I recently found out, is that the cinnamon like sticks you buy isn't actually cinnamon. I don't know what plant it is, but like true cinnamon is incredibly expensive.
Dang.
I mean, you're looking at like $20 or $30 for a couple of sticks of cinnamon.
Woo.
Versus, you go to Walmart and $10 will get you maybe like a half pound of cinnamon sticks because they're not real cinnamon. So that was the only thing from that brew that wasn't, I guess in a nutshell, like organic. Like the yeast that I pick up, I try to get not necessarily organic, but I mean, yeast is one of the most organic things that we can get our hands on because it is a live culture. It's constantly reproducing, and then you basically dry it, and once you add water with sugar, they just go crazy and start reproducing, making more yeast. And you can take a culture, so like if you get a little packet of like bread yeast from the store, you can theoretically have your own yeast culture forever. Like you
Oh.
can constantly, yeah, it will constantly be reproducing. And that's where the kombucha comes in, is a lot of kombucha, from what I know about it, is that it is like one yeast strain that has been used and used and used for years and years. And it's just from one culture of yeast. They are able to grow that culture to be where they can take a little bit of it, and that is all they need to make their kombucha. And they just keep growing and growing one culture of yeast to where it's just an entire, like, that's one whole like 8 to 12 ounce mason jar full of yeast that they grew. And I'm not sure I'm really explaining that well, but for any listeners who feel the need to look up how yeast grows, I don't know exactly how yeast grows. I just know the fermentation process. And basically, like fermentation, all you need is water, sugar, and yeast. And
Huh.
that's all you need. And you can that's what we've done with as far as like our stills to start producing like ethanol, and for gasoline stuff is you can take corn and take the sugars from that. So basically, like what you could use corn for to make like high fructose corn syrup and things like that. We are extracting the simple sugars and the pure sugar from the corn, adding yeast, making it essentially a beer, distilling that, and there you have some form of ethanol, but also some kind of like drinkable substance such as like whiskey.
Okay.
But I'm not going to get into all the distillation stuff. But yeah, fermentation is it's super fascinating to watch that science. I was formerly a chemical engineering major.
I did not know
And
that.
I was, yes, for 1 year, 2 semesters, I was a chemical engineering major. I was a criminal justice major for 1 semester. I changed over to chemical engineering. Wasn't doing too hot, so then I just stopped going to school altogether. Then 8 years later, I got into computer science, and that's what my degree is in now.
Like, how many meads,
Yes,
like different kinds of meads, have you made, and which one's been your favorite?
I have made, I'll probably say about 14 different meads and 3 or 4 different wines. And my favorite one was actually one of my earlier batches that I did not do the proper thing for scientific collection and documentation. I didn't record anything about that mead. So to replicate it, I would I have nothing to go off of. But it was a black cherry mead
Ooh.
that was very sweet, and I'm assuming it was about, I don't know, probably 13 to 14% alcohol. And it was 2 pounds of black cherries. That I do know. It was 2 pounds of black cherries, 2 pounds of honey, um, and basically about as much of a gallon of spring water as I could fit into my 1 gallon fermenter. And I just let it go for about 2 weeks, took the cherries out, and then let it keep going for, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 more months. And then I bottled it. I gave a bottle out to a coworker of mine. And I think it was like the next week he gave me that bottle back saying it didn't last 2 days. And
Whoa.
yeah,
Dang, that's good
two
stuff.
days. Yep. And when I tried it, I only had your typical wine bottle is 750 milliliters. I had a 375 milliliter bottle, so half a 750 that I had of that mead, and I had to push it so I wouldn't keep drinking it. I would pour a little bit, and I kept finding myself pouring a splash here and there. I was like, I can't keep doing this. This is too good. and it was something I was trying to hold on to share with some people. And when I started pouring samples for them, I realized that I only had 2 ounces of that stuff left.
Oh no.
And I told him, I was like, look, I will share this with you, but I want at least a half ounce from that. And that's what we did. We met up in Kentucky. This was November of 22. So yeah, this was probably one of my first 3 meads I made. I think I started 3 batches pretty close together. But yeah, if I could do it, black cherries are so expensive, and that process, I had to de-pit every single black cherry.
Ooh.
And 2 pounds of black cherries is a lot.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot.
But I love making mead, and it's basically, I love the outcome. Even if it's a dud, the process, like, I'm learning every time I make something. But yeah, I will have to remake that one at some point and let you have a bottle.
I'm glad that you told me like some of the chemical stuff, because like, at least growing up, the only metric that I had for mead is like when it shows up in different like video games, like fantasy video games, as like a an item. As like I had no idea what a mead was, like no idea.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is as far as like going back to, you know, Viking times when they were making mead in barrels, from some historical standpoints that I've seen about these meads, is they were extremely sweet. And by extremely sweet, your typical fermentation to get something like a sweet wine or any kind of sweet flavor, you're looking at about a month of fermentation, and then you have to stop the fermentation. Whether this is something I haven't done, is add chemicals to stop the yeast from fermenting to keep making alcohol. You can put your vessel in a pot of boiling water to heat it up, because yeast can only thrive and stay alive up until about 140 to 160 degrees. And so what people will do is they'll boil like a pot of water and have their vessel in there to heat the meat up to about 180 degrees for 10 to 15 minutes to kill the yeast. But you're looking at about a month fermentation for something that's really sweet. And from a historical standpoint, what the Vikings were doing is you're looking at like 2 weeks of fermenting, and then they're dipping their glass in or their mug in and getting, you know, a dram of mead that is probably so sweet that, you know, they probably didn't have teeth. We are talking so sweet. It's almost like a cup of honey,
like syrup.
Oh yeah, I mean, it is so thick and sweet. And I've tried it. I've tried it at that, and you're talking like 3 or 4% alcohol, and your sugar content is well over like your typical can of like Mountain Dew or something.
You'd almost think that it would go the reverse as far as history is concerned. You'd think, oh, our modern day equivalent of mead would be like for wimps like me who still have a child's palate and it's super sweet and there's not a lot of alcohol in it. But it's like the polar opposite, where like meads are more alcoholic now than they were back then. And it's fascinating that you mentioned the Vikings, because I just did a quick little wiki search here on the terminal, because I was like, I know from reading, I don't remember if it's in Beowulf, but I was like, I know the term mead hall, like there's an actual building called a mead hall. And I'll just read what it says up at the top of this page. It's really cool. Among the early Germanic peoples, a mead hall or feasting hall was a large building with a single room intended to receive guests and serve as a center of community social life. From the 5th century to the early Middle Ages, such a building was the residence of a lord or king and his retainers. These structures were also where lords could formally receive visitors and where the community would gather to socialize, allowing lords to oversee the social activity of their subjects. So it's like a mead hall was literally like the place where all the community stuff happened, because like the king, the closest thing I can think of is from Lord of the Rings, the people from Rohan, how they have that hall, I think it's called Edoras or something like that, where Theoden is. It's very similar, where like his throne is inside of, it's not just a throne room, it's like a social room. There's like a fire pit and tables, and like that whole idea of like a mead hall being like the place where people gather is just sort of really, I think it's cool.
Yeah, and that was what you had back in, you know, the way early times. I mean, I don't even know of a year range, like 1100s, 1200s. Before or after that, I'm not sure when Vikings were around, but at least doing playthroughs of like Oblivion and Skyrim from the Elder Scrolls,
Yeah.
those like the meeting halls and stuff. I mean, everybody had a like a wooden tankard of mead or some kind of beer or wine in it. And I mean, that was just like your hangout spot, just like bars are today, or before cell phones came about. Everybody would socialize at either each other's house or at a pub or brewery. Because I've been over to this has been a few years since before we got trapped in this building. But I used to go out to breweries with my wife, who I haven't seen in, geez, I used to keep track of the days.
They'll rebuild that ramp. They'll get a new lowest bidder, and they'll make it out of toothpicks or something, and then you just got to go fast,
Yeah, you just got to go fast, take your chances,
Yeah, before the Elmer's glue gives away, you just got to go.
Yep, the Elmer's glue and your best budget toothpicks. They could even be like those plastic little sword toothpicks you see. Or they might have a little umbrella on them. Who knows?
Did you ever save the little sword ones that you get in sandwiches for your action figures? Did you ever do that?
I did. I had a couple of those, and then my parents thought that was disgusting, so they threw them away.
I remember at like a craft store, I got like a bag of these little, they were colorful wooden dowels. And so, of course, kid brain is like, lightsabers, and so I just put one in like all of my action figures' hand. Like, it was amazing the number of my action figures where you could actually put something in their hand and they all just fit perfectly. And so, there's just a day where like all of my action figures had lightsabers, basically.
That is cool. I have done the toothpick umbrella one.
Oh, the parasol, yeah.
I had one of those. But again, like that went away with the swords and other things that are typically a one-time use. And
they're supposed to be.
I mean, they're like a little novelty. Like, oh, like you're selling or you're giving away these things. I'm going to keep it forever with my action figure.
This is back during the age range where your favorite part of every place your parents drag you to is what? The gift shop.
The gift shop, yep. Or back in the day when McDonald's used to have the little play pits and the ball pits.
Yeah.
If we're going, somewhere for fast food after, church on a Sunday, we'd go to McDonald's or Chick-fil-A. Well, not Chick-fil-A on Sundays. We don't do that. That's the Lord's Chicken.
That's
Lord's
quite
Chicken
literally the
on
one
Sundays.
day they're not open.
Yep. Yeah. Lord's Chicken is not available on Sundays.
No, definitely not. Well, the crazy thing, I remember, like, the year that all of the Playplaces went away. Like, it was a pretty fast turnaround. I feel like all of them rebranded fairly quickly. It was surreal because I feel like I was just old enough that I wasn't interested in them anymore, didn't go to them anymore, so I lucked out in that sense. But it was a little bit surreal where, like, something that was super normal. Now, if I tried to explain to, like, a Gen Alpha kid what a play place was at a restaurant, they'd look at me like I was a space alien because they just don't exist anymore.
Gen Alpha.
Yeah, Gen Alpha.
Wow.
That's the new. That's that
that
new
was the
stuff. Yeah, that's the.
Oh, but absolutely,
That's what the younglings are
explain-
called these days, Brendan.
Yeah, I am pushing 30, my guy. I
Yeah.
am towards the end of the millennials. What year were you born?
98.
Ah, so you're right at the beginning of what was that, Gen Z?
I'm somewhere. I feel like I have looked this up like 40 different times, and every time I look up what age range I technically qualify for, the answer is different. Like, I feel like it's so arbitrary. Like,
I mean, I would put you with like boomers. just based off of knowing you. Nothing wrong with that.
You'd put me in the boomer category. Okay, all right, I see you. All right.
You act like such an old man for somebody who's only like 24?
25, but
20,
yeah,
25,
no,
yeah, you're about to be 26, yeah.
I'll accept that. I'll accept that. I'll accept that with dignity.
There's no slide on that though.
Of course not.
I wouldn't. But see, I wouldn't put you with millennials, and I wouldn't put you with Gen Z.
Well, thank you for not putting me with the millennials. Thank you. Thank you for that.
I will take the millennials over Gen Z, but I think that's the conflict of somebody born in '94 versus '98. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you at least
I
got a
guess,
little bit more of the slice of the 90s that I wish that I could actually remember. Because,
Yeah.
like, my older sisters will quote stuff or talk about stuff from, oh, yeah, the 90s. Like, they remember some things, not a lot of things. But I have, like, virtually, obviously, no memory of that at all. All of my memories are post-2000.
Yeah, and see, like for me, like I've watched, I could watch planes take off from the terminal, and then walk out of the airport, and that's something that a lot of kids that just blows their mind because all they've ever seen is, you have to go through TSA to even get there, and you have to have a plane ticket to get to.
Yeah, you can't get past that initial gate. Yeah, you gotta just wave goodbye to them and then walk away. Yeah, it's crazy.
And that was definitely a big thing. Like, I mean, not necessarily for me. I think I only did that like once, but like
That's still
looking back,
cool
it's
though.
like,
One of the coolest things at an airport that I ever saw was there was one time in Civil Air Patrol that I got to be part of, like, basically the welcoming committee for an honor flight. So we were welcoming these veterans back from DC. So we actually got to see their plane land. Like, we were actually able to get through to their initial, like, unloading area. And they pulled these fire trucks out onto the tarmac, and they shoot water in an arc, like one on each side, as the plane lands. It is so cool.
I've only seen videos of that. I've never seen it in person. But yeah, that is super cool.
Oh, question for you. This is a question that I fell off of asking my podcast guests, but I love asking it because you get so many different strange and fascinating answers, and you'll probably know which question it is. If you had your druthers, if money was no object, and you could take yourself and, let's say, 4 to 5 people to a place that was completely removed of people. There were no people there. You have the entire place to yourself for 24 hours. Where are you going?
Wow. I have thought through this, and I have come up with different answers.
Dude, a corporate office late at night where you could just run around with, like, Nerf guns. Like, literally any place that's just like I think like a convention center with no displays, just open areas, just giant rooms, empty, where you could just throw a frisbee around and be loud and, like, that stuff, man. I think about that stuff all the time. I'm just like, oh, I wish I had this place to myself.
So if money was no issue and there's nobody, I feel like I would probably take people out to a racetrack.
Ooh.
Shut down a racetrack for 24 hours.
That's cool.
And just access to any car you want. And just take it out. Yeah. That's what I would do.
Lights on and everything. Like, the night lights are going, and you and your friends can just, like, you don't even have to go death-defyingly fast, but, like, just to have the cars and to be able to just zoom around the tracks a little bit, that would be really cool.
Yep. Unlimited gas, unlimited, like, nothing's going to break. Everything's going to be peak condition. Yeah. That's what I would do. I would go to a racetrack.
Well, I like that answer. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the episode. I'll let you get back to concocting both your fuel and your alcohol. Don't mix those up, okay? Make sure you don't mix them up.
I won't mix them up. And, it supplies everybody with, you won't have to worry about power going out entirely. The generators may take a couple seconds to kick on, and if you're on one of the lower level offices, I'm sorry, the power is just going to take a couple minutes or hours if it ever reaches you.
Don't light any candles in here, okay?
However, the booze, that does go down a shaft that can make its way to levels like 1 through 20. So yeah, the booze, like, we got the booze settled.
Did you say a shaft? Are you just throwing booze down a shaft?
Well, an elevator shaft. Like, the little, what do they call those?
Are you talking about a dumbwaiter?
Dumb waiter. That's what I was thinking of.
If you go to France during the Server Olympics, I wouldn't use the term dumb waiter, or at least not say it very loudly, because you might offend some people.
I might offend one of the waiters. Yeah.
Yeah,
they may not be dumb.
They'll break a new world record for running up to you and slapping you in the face with a tray, with a croissant, an empty cup of coffee.
Le croissant. Yeah.
Le croissant. All right. Well, that's gonna do it for this. That's gonna do it for this episode, everyone. And remember, Brendan, if you do happen to find an exit, please let me know. I'm trying to get out of here. And that's gonna do it for this episode. So thank you all so much for listening, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.